Hello everybody, I hope you had a good lunch and great networking. The web is also about this. And it's a great day. Are you having a good day? Yes. As much as I am having a good day, I hope you do, because it's pretty unique for me today, of course. So without further ado, I'd like to announce someone who also doesn't need much introduction. Eric Schmidt, who is the Executive Chairman of Google. Welcome, Eric. Thank you. Eric, the theme of the conference has been chosen around what I think you consider is very important, social local mobile.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about why is this important for you?
Well, it seems to me that all the new interesting applications are going to be some combination of social, local, and mobile. They're social because we spend our time in a social world. They're mobile because mobile first is the answer to almost every question now. All the best engineering is going on to mobile platforms and mobile apps. And local is because we live in a local context. And that means e-commerce, information, fun, friends, all the things that we as humans care about.
Some people say it's just a fashion and it's not, here to stay. Do you think it's something that is going to change the way we live?
Well, social, local, mobile has been true for humans for at least 10,000 years. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. One of the things about technology is that the old timers like myself assumed that technology looked like these big computers and these hard, complicated, computing things. But in fact, computing is an appliance, it's a service, it's something that works for you as a human being. It's the test of whether your mother or your friend or whatever who's not a technical person can use it. And I think the last 5 years we've seen breakouts in many, many different companies where they've built products that are really genuinely easy to use. They don't require a technician to set them up.
And talking about mobile, I think you came with a demo?
Yes. Why don't we it's quicker if we just introduce Hugo Berra. He's my good friend and is the director of product management and basically in charge of all the Android products. So Hugo, do you want to come on up?
Welcome, Hugo. It's
Thank
good
you,
to
Eric.
see you.
Yeah, Hugo, the basic idea here is why don't you sort of give everybody an update on all the new Android stuff coming. I think it's all debuting essentially in Europe this week.
That's right, Eric. So I will touch on the three themes of Loic this year, mobile, social, and a bit of a local tease at the end by talking about ice cream sandwich. Ice cream sandwich is the...
Ice cream sandwich is just because it begins with the word I, right? It's actually a softer release, and the one before it was called Honeycomb, which starts with an H. I figured it out.
Well done.
What's the one after I?
After I is J, but we don't know what that stands for.
Okay, go ahead.
Not quite yet, but suggestions are welcome. We'll definitely take yours into very carefully. So I want to give you a quick tour of ice cream sandwich. As Eric said, it's the 4th generation of the Android platform. And I'm going to do it on this device. This is the Samsung Galaxy Nexus smartphone. It's the first Android that runs ice cream sandwich. Thank you very much. And it's available in the UK, and it'll be available throughout the rest of Europe, literally over the next few days and a couple of weeks. So most people who are here should be able to get one. So why don't we switch over to the device, and we'll get started. There you go. So I'm going to start with one of my favorites. We're introducing a new way to secure your phone with ice cream sandwich using some facial recognition technology that's built right into the platform. We call this feature Face Unlock. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to power down to lock my phone. And then when I power back up, it'll be locked. And all I have to do is look at it, and hopefully it'll remember who I am and unlock the device. So let me try that. And there you go. Want to see it again? And there you go. It's unlocked.
Does it follow that if it sees your face, it locks itself up?
But maybe. We'll consider that as well as a future request.
No, so it's just an unlock right now.
Face unlock to secure your device. And we'll talk more about facial recognition in just a second. So this is the ice cream sandwich home screen, which I can customize completely any way I want. So let me show you how I customize it for how I use this device. I'm going to swipe over to the left. So this is what I call my work screen. So I've got my email here up at the top, I've got my calendar at the bottom. These are both scrollable, interactive widgets.
Eric just emailed you, actually. That's
he did, and I'll get to that in a second. So these are interactive widgets. It means I can keep track of important stuff without actually having to launch an app. Especially important for something like email and calendar, which you do 10, 20, 50 times a day. I've got a folder here with the apps that I use while I'm working, and I've got some of the people that I have to call on a regular basis. So literally with one touch, I can call these people from my phone. I'm going to go over one more screen to the left. This is my Hangout screen. One of the widgets here is having some issues loading. We may have a wireless problem, but I'll carry on. So what you're seeing here on the top is a stream of my Google Plus folks, people that I'm following. What you would have seen here at the bottom are photos coming in real time from Google Plus. I also have a folder with my favorite games over here and a link to Latitude. And we're talking about widgets. So I want to go over to what we're doing about widgets and Ice Cream Sandwich. We're making widgets first-class citizens. So if you notice here at the top, we've added a tab alongside your apps just for widgets. So you can see visually all the widgets that you have on your phone straight from this page. And for example, if I want to add one, I can just hold it, go over to the screen where I want to drop it, just let it go. And it's right there. I can resize it if I want, make it exactly the size that fits the layout that I'm going for. And that's widgets. We're also adding a button, a dedicated button to multitasking in Ice Cream Sandwich. That's the button down here. So if I tap on this, I get a visual preview of what's running on my device. And it's easy to switch by just tapping on any of this. And of course, if I want to get rid of any of these, I can just swipe to toss it out of my way. It's a very satisfying gesture. So that's what we call resets. We've also done a pretty significant overhaul of notifications in Ice Cream Sandwich. So if I pull down my notifications shade here, you'll see that I have visually rich notifications this time around. And I also have interactive widgets in the form of notifications. So for example, I can control my music playback by just tapping on this widget. And I can control without actually having to go into the app. And that same satisfying swipe gesture is what I can use to get rid of notifications that are no longer important. So very fine control. And the incredible thing is I actually haven't left the home screen, and it feels like I've been describing a full-fledged application platform to you already, and I'm still on the home screen. So we spent a lot of energy making this really great for everyone. Now, I want to talk about social, the second theme that Eric alluded to. We've worked really hard to try to weave people and sharing into the operating system with Ice Cream Sandwich. And it starts with the People app, this app right here. People is the evolution of the Contacts app.
Let's see, we're seeing who you follow. 50 Cent.
So I've got some of my friends listed down here, but what I wanted to spend time on actually is this screen. This is my favorite screen. This is where I put the people that I communicate with on a regular basis. It's presented to you in this beautiful grid with high resolution photos, and it's awesome. So I'll tap on, Eric, your charming photo right here, and we go into your people card. So the people card is useful in a number of ways. First of all, I can see how I'm connected to Eric. In this case, I'm following him on Google Plus and on Twitter. And what's cool about the people card is that the contact details that you see here are a combination of what I have for Eric in my address book and what he has decided to share with me. So if he updates his phone number, for example, it will just show up in the people card on my phone, and I can just call him without having to worry about updating. I can swipe over to the right in the people card, and I'll see an aggregate view of all of his posts, in this case for Google Plus and Twitter. All of this is done via open APIs, so any service can tap into this, in typical Android fashion.
Nice picture.
And I really did post that about 45 minutes ago. So, from yesterday's office opening here in Paris.
Fantastic. Now here's something really cool. I'm going to go back to the home screen, And I'll go to that email, Loic, that you were referring to earlier.
Fantastic, let's move on.
From Eric.
Fantastic.
So here's the email, obviously very important. I could reply to this, but I may want to actually call Eric or text him because this is an important timely message. So what I'll do is I'm going to tap on his photo. And what I get here is a mini version of that people card that you saw earlier. And that'll appear everywhere in the operating system. So I can immediately pivot over to making a phone call or texting him and so on. And in this case, I actually am going to invite him for a video chat because I want to show you another cool feature in Ice Cream Sandwich. Let's try that.
No, and I think the key argument here is that we started off thinking that these phones were like computers. We forgot that phones are really about communication. And so in this version of the Android, it's extraordinarily communications and social centric in a way I've not seen before. In fact, there we go.
So hi there, I actually have your computer here, Eric, so you get two of me instead of Eric and me. So I'm going to switch over to the phone. So this is the new Google Talk app in Ice Cream Sandwich, and we're using the same facial recognition technology that you saw earlier to do something really fun. This is called Live Effects, and it's being applied to the image at 60 frames a second. So what would I look like with bigger nose? Let's try that again. I'll try a bigger mouth. How about that?
Yes.
Try another effect.
How about big eyes as well?
Notice how this is being applied to my face, no matter where my face is in the picture, as you can see here, it works.
This is the key reason that you want an Android phone. I can't think of another reason to use an Android phone than to see Hugo squished.
So that was people in Ice Cream Sandwich. Now we're still talking about social. I want to talk a little bit about photos, taking photos and sharing photos. And to that I'm going to switch over to the device number 3, please. This is, what you'll see in a second, is an Android tablet that's running Ice Cream Sandwich. I believe this is the first time we're actually showing this. And what I'll do is I'll go back to the lock screen. And in this case, what I'll do is I'll go directly from the lock screen to my camera app. So I'll just launch it with a gesture to drag to the left. And I'm going to go ahead and take a picture. But instead of taking a normal picture, what I'll do is I'll take a panorama shot, which is a new type of picture that you can now take with Ice Cream Sandwich. So let's start that. And I have an Android scene over here, so I'll just pan over. So while it's stitching the real deal panorama, gives me a preview, and in a couple of seconds I'll get the full high resolution version of this panorama. And then what I'll do with it is I'm going to share it. So I'll just tap over here, and this is the high resolution version of the panorama. And what I can do from this screen is I can share it. And I can share it with any number of apps, basically any app on my device that is hooked into the open photo sharing API. I've got a number of apps here, so I'll choose to share it with Google+. So it's attached to my location, gone ahead, posted it. And what I did here was from the lock screen to fully sharing a panoramic picture in literally just 3 or 4 taps of the screen of the device. So pretty awesome stuff. There's one other sharing feature that I want to talk to you about. In fact, this is my favorite Android feature of all time. It's called Android Beam. Android Beam is some NFC-based technology that we've developed to allow people
and remind everybody what NFC means. Near field communication. It's a chip that authenticates you.
Thank you, Eric. So if we could go over to the Wolf Vision. There you go. So what I have here is I've got 2 devices. I've got my Galaxy Nexus, and I've got a Nexus S that's running Ice Cream Sandwich as well. And I've got some content over here that I want to send over to this guy. Imagine you're in the bus next to someone and you want to share an article, for example. So what I'll do is I'll touch the 2 devices. You may have heard a beep, and then it's now downloading from the web, but you can already see they got the URL. And there you go.
So the Kardashians can spread through yet another mechanism.
And out of the box, Android Beam works with the web browser, as you can see. It'll work with Google Maps, it'll work with YouTube, and any other number of apps. I'll actually show you a Maps one real quick. This is one of my favorite places here in Paris. Eric, let's say I want to share this place with you so you know where it is and how to get there. And just so you can see the full effect, I'll just turn this guy down for a second. I'll tap it. And it opens map on this device, and it's now loading it. There it is. Perfect. And the cool thing about Android Beam is that it comes with some really powerful open APIs. So in a matter of weeks, we'll start seeing a number of apps using this for sharing photos, for starting social games. Imagine being able to play a game with someone who's right next to you by literally tapping the two devices and so on. And in fact, what we've done is we've allowed every app to respond to an NFC share intent by doing the following. I'll just open one of my favorite games here, that's Fruit Ninja. So it's running on this device, but it's actually not on this device. I don't have it over on this device. So what I'll do is I'll tap. And because I don't have the game running on this device, so I didn't actually transfer. Oh, I did. There you go. So it took me to Android Market, so I can download it and obviously then be able to play it. So Android Beam is the beginning of what we think a really exciting ecosystem sort of developer API that people are going to use in some hopefully very imaginative ways. So that was mobile and social. I'll give you a quick preview of local, something that I think will start really interesting conversation.
Hugo is just stealing the show entirely.
So let's go back to the device number 3, please. And what I'll do here, just for a quick second, I'm going to go to Google Maps. And I'm going to, so I'm in Minneapolis here, and Minneapolis is home to the Mall of the Americas, which some of you may know is.
I was actually just there last week. And
really?
what's interesting about the GPS, remember, is it's only a signal that you can get externally, because it's satellite-based.
And so as you can imagine, it's a gigantic mall. And what we just launched a couple weeks ago is a new category of products by adding indoor location positioning into Google Maps. So if I zoom in further, you see that now I see a full map of the inside of the mall. And I can even look at different floors of the mall. And we've developed technology that uses Wi-Fi positioning so that we actually know exactly where the user is and exactly on which floor that user is, of course, assuming that you decided to use my location. And search works in here, direction works in here, so you can search for a store.
So if you're basically lost in the largest mall in America, you can find your way out.
Exactly. So I thought this would be a good conversation starter, and I'll leave you guys with that.
And here we go.
So,
thank you.
So thank you very much, Hugo, for all of that. And have a good flight back. So thank you, Hugo. The combination of all of that, and then one more thing which we're announcing, I think this week, is basically a web analytics platform for social, so that you can actually see what's going on in the social graphs that you're building. The combination of all of that, I think, brings the open social data that people care about now into the developer world and the kinds of businesses that folks here in the room can actually build.
That was a great demo.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we keep the conversation, I'd like to say we will have questions at the end. Eric insists. You know, I have to actually disclose this. Most speakers, very often they tell you, hey, can we have the questions before? And maybe not the questions of the room. And I'm not, of course, talking about anyone. But Eric insisted on 1, not having any question before. 2, that I ask anything I want about anything. And 3, that the room participates as much as we can. So please get ready for some questions. You'll have troubles to move. I've never seen the room like this, which is great. But we'll have microphones in about 10-15 minutes around. And I would suggest if you want to ask a question, maybe you should line here or something. We'll get it organized while we talk with her. Eric, tell me about. We'll get back to Android. I think this is very exciting.
Sure.
Tell me about the future, the trends. How do you see you have such a role in this industry? I'd like really to get like above the clouds here.
Well, here we are.
Pilot,
That's right. Here we are in Europe, and I was trying to think about what are sort of layers of trends. And And I think a first layer of trend is that the global governance system, the one that we have all grown up with, is under a lot of strain. I think Europeans know very well that the European experiment, which is a good goal, is having a rough patch because the incentives weren't quite right and the mechanisms for resolving the various problems that people get into are not fully thought out. The consequence of all of that is that a lot of people are worried that in the West there'll be a recession in 2012, which is obviously be a terrible outcome, and all of our governments are working very hard to address that. What's interesting is that the high-tech world, although not completely insulated from that, is really having its own sort of separate experience. And in high-tech, one way to think about what we're doing is to think of a physical world and a cyber world, and that the two are somewhat at odds with one another now. The physical world, the one that we're used to with governments and laws and so forth, is struggling through its various challenges. But the cyber world itself is creating a set of expectations and norms about behavior. And I've been thinking about how this would work, for example, in the future, as everyone has a mobile phone, and they'll have an Android phone, an iPhone, a BlackBerry, what have you, because everyone will ultimately have smartphones. There's about a billion smartphones out of about 5 billion phones today in the world, and I think eventually we'll get to 6 billion phones, and the majority of those will be smartphones as data plans proliferate and prices go down. In that model, all of a sudden the expectations of citizens from their governments, of each other, and so forth are being defined by what we can do on the web. There are lots and lots of consequences, for example. And my conclusion, by the way, is that each of these two worlds merges together in an equilibrium where they improve each other. In the case of the physical world, what happens, like, to give an example, we have a terrible dictator who's busy committing genocide. Well, people can photograph this, they can document it, and we can begin the trials of this evil person even before they're done. The consequence, of course, I believe, is less mortality, a better and safer world. Similarly, in cyberspace, some of the excesses of cyberspace will be, if you will, limited by governments as they see people adopting all this new technology. I think the third, if I go down one more layer, you have in our world, the world we all inhabit and love so very much, the technology platform world, the emergence of sort of an understanding that the way you're very successful is you build platforms at scale. Android, of course, a very, very successful platform already. The numbers that we quote these days are 550,000 activations per day, more than 200 million phones installed, and these numbers are growing very, very rapidly, with a wide variety of phones, all moving to the ICS release that you just saw over the next 6 months. It's all good. But what I would say to the developers in the room, and the reason I'm here is because I fundamentally believe you have attracted the top entrepreneurs in all of Europe, is that you want to build and anticipate the need for a scalable network platform. That your predecessors built this phenomenal network, right? All of the people who made the interconnectivity, which we take for granted, that was hard to build. I remember, I helped build it, and I'm very proud of it. So that you now have an opportunity to build on the world's remarkable connected resource. The most successful companies will figure out a way to build scalable platforms that scale very, very fast, and that's how you're successful.
I'm very excited by this as well. How do you see the connection between the human, I'm staying at 20, 50 years away. The connection between the brain and the computer is something that is pretty exciting. All the, what Ray Kurzweil has, written about, and how do you see that? Do you see this happening? We have actually a demo tomorrow of Interaxon, a company that actually maps the brainwaves and lets you see that. Do you think we're going to get computers on us more and more?
Well, it's been clear for years that you would have lots of IP addresses attached to you in one form or another. The standard joke could be that you'd have one in your watch and one in your shoe and one in your purse and so forth. So the notion of a single multi-purpose device is probably not true. It's probably the case that you'll have lots of devices that will be highly personalized using the cloud behind you. I think that's pretty obvious. One way to think about the evolution of computing is to think that the computers will do what they do well and humans will do what we do well. So what do we do well? Intuition, enjoyment, entertainment, creativity, all the human things we all care about. What do computers do really well? They solve needle in a haystack problems that are phenomenal, and they have infinite memories. So here I am in Paris. I love Paris. I've been coming here for decades. With my permission, obviously on an opt-in basis, my phone should have a record of where I was, what I did, who I saw, so forth and so on, so I can refer to it and remind myself of what I liked and what I didn't like, right? Because your human memory is fallible. And I think that with that big data explosion, and the computer science answer is that there's an explosion in big data. The number of exabytes of information that are created per few days now equals the sum of information created in humanity over the preceding 10,000 years. So the scope of data generation looks a power law straight up. So the analysis of that for predictions, for suggestions, and so forth is what we're going to see. So eventually your phone will make a suggestion of what you might like, where you might like to go, again, in an opt-in basis, where your friends might be. It'll predict where there'll be traffic jams, those sorts of things, which are needle and haystack problems.
You seem to be very interested in being connected to governments and our political leaders. And we've seen what happened in the Arab world, in Egypt, in Libya. And there's a lot of, you see, huge impact from social. How do you see, or what do you tell those leaders, not the Arab leaders per se, but the politicians? What do you tell them? Do you advise them?
Well, the good news is ever since Arab Spring, everybody's paying attention to the power of our community. But I don't want to overstate our contribution. Our contribution was in providing more tools to people who were very courageous, who risked their lives. So we were the tool suppliers, if you will, to people who crave democracy, crave free speech, and so forth. And we're all very proud of participating in that. But they were the courageous ones, not us. But everyone is now talking about this because a new form or force of political pressure indeed is newsworthy around the world. I've come to the view that it's much easier now to start a revolution, but it's harder to finish it. That it's easy to start a revolution because it's easy to actually, people always have complaints about society, and especially in an unjust society, you can now mobilize them fairly quickly. But the mobilizing itself does not produce the leader to replace the current leader. It's possible, for example, that you can have a youth movement of people who are passionate but inexperienced in governance and not end up with a leader. This is perhaps the problem that Egypt is struggling with right now, and something which they'll obviously have to work out. And once you've started the revolution, the other thing that's happened because of mobile phones and connection technology is expectations are very, very high. It took, as the president was saying yesterday, it took 100 years for France to stabilize into the modern and wonderful democracy that it is today after the French Revolution and Marie Antoinette and her problems, or lack of head. And that's a long time. And I can't imagine the modern mobile consumer waiting 100 years for their country to achieve their democratic vision. It's just not going to happen.
You have met with the president yesterday. What did you tell him? What did you discuss?
One of the most important things I think is that Silicon Valley needs a competitor. Competition is good, and Silicon Valley has shown a model of innovation around technology and the kinds of things that we're talking about. And there's a number of cities, of which I consider Paris to be one of them, that have the possibility of being a significant competitor. And why do I say cities? After all, the Bay Area is largely a suburb. Well, today, entrepreneurship tends to break out young because people have less to lose, if you will. They tend to be current and are perhaps more risk-seeking. They have less of a family commitment or what have you because of the stage of life that they're in. And those people tend to prefer cities. There's also a lot of evidence in the United States, and I think it's always been true in Europe, that the cultural vibrancy, the diversity of opinion, the diversity of people, the tolerance of different religions, all of those things tend to produce stronger human organizations, and that you're more likely to get a diverse point of view, both in terms of creativity and engineering, in cities. So for every reason, I believe that there's a shot at Paris becoming a significant player in entrepreneurship. And I think that's true of a number of other cities in Europe and the United States. when you talk to politicians about this, they sort of, as politicians will, they'll just nod, and that means I am listening to you. That doesn't mean I agree with you. I've learned that. Sort of go like this. But what they really care about is jobs. And there's a lot of evidence that the internet is creating jobs, that the revolution that we're all part of.
And you are creating jobs in Google. Yesterday you just...
Yes, in our case we announced creating some jobs, but what's really important is that the internet revolution itself is creating new jobs because it's creating new markets for existing businesses. So if you are a small business today who has a local market, and frankly the business outlook in Europe is not good at the moment, how are you going to get a new customer? Well, you're going to get that new customer through the web. And so a simple message so what I then say to governments, and it's an easy message in the case of France, is the role of government is to make sure that the citizens have access to inexpensive fixed and wireless broadband. If you have fixed and wireless broadband, the citizens will take care of everything else. You don't need to worry about anything else. They'll build the businesses, they'll create the value, they'll get the content, they'll worry about your language, do all other things, because it'll be their expression of their culture. But the government has to make sure broadband is there.
How about regulation? In Europe, there is a lot of willingness to regulate the internet, and I don't know what you think about this, but they actually see Google sometimes as knowing a lot about the individuals. And so what do you tell them? Like, don't do anything on privacy?
Well, we're always concerned with premature regulation. I love laws that prevent products that haven't happened yet. Right? That's sort of the ultimate non-entrepreneurial view of the world. Thou shalt not invent this product. As opposed to let's invent the product and we'll look at it and then we'll decide what it really is as opposed to what you think it is. As entrepreneurship, you don't necessarily know. But in general, I think that the governments recognize the importance of the internet. What I always say to the governments is, whatever you do, don't turn off the internet.
That's a bad idea, right?
If you don't like the mirror, don't break the mirror, right? Figure out what the image problem is. And I think in Europe, there's a tendency to want to regulate some of this, but the process is relatively well thought through. If you look at the European privacy initiatives, I think they're pretty consistent with the European values. And so what we do is we just engage, talk, as is usual in Brussels. And it'll come to something reasonable. I'm not too worried about it. I'm more concerned that we get the message out together that the internet is the core source of future growth in Europe. And it's actually relatively simple. Europe is not going to become a low-wage manufacturing country, a set of countries. It's not going to happen, right? That investment in education, adoption of the internet, becoming global players, promoting your ideas, your science, your technology, and so forth, is the way to create differential value in a globalized market. So you don't have a choice.
Back to the Silicon Valley of Europe, I agree.
Yeah.
However...
Well, I think that with your conference here, you're actually trying to sort of do that, right? You're trying to serve as a place, which is why I'm here. I think it's important to say that it's not just because of the weather that Silicon Valley is where it is. Perfectly possible that a combination of early stage investing, there's not enough of it here, and learning, the kind of learning that goes on by having a community of entrepreneurs who shares ideas, you can pull it off.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, and we have 60 countries here. Coming here helps that, so thank you for that. But we've been talking about it for ages. It's all like we...
Well, there's no time like now to do it.
Right, but then you have competition between Berlin, London, Paris, Madrid.
Competition is good. Get your act together.
Agree?
If you're a French entrepreneur, you love Paris, do it in Paris. If you don't do it in Paris, you're going to have to go work in one of those other countries you don't like the ones next door. Sorry.
No, I fully agree. You told that to the president?
Yes.
He knows, right?
And furthermore, you might even need to move to the United States, where we will guarantee not to give you a visa because we're idiots. This is a separate discussion.
Do you see...
And the reason I'm trying to be so obnoxious here, but there is a huge race now to own identity, social services, electronic commerce on these mobile platforms. I've traveled the world. There are people, very, very smart people, and I can tell you that they are in a lot of different countries, and they're all trying very hard. There is an opportunity to build the next Facebook, the next Google, and so forth, right in front of you. Why do I know it? One, it's obvious, and two, it's always been true. You just have to find it.
It looks like I agree with you. Let's talk about Facebook. We were talking about the Arab, what recently happened in the Arab countries. It's mostly related, we always relate it to Facebook. You can see those signs, thank you Facebook, in some countries. How is it, so you've just launched Google Plus? How important it is for Google? How are you going to, how big of a competitor is Facebook?
Well, first of all, Facebook has done a very good job, and we should congratulate them. And I think they've really moved the ball forward. And it's useful for anybody to have competition, as we discussed earlier.
You just told me that, yes.
That's right. So that's fine. The Arab Spring saying is that we use Facebook to organize the protests, we use Twitter to get people out, and we use YouTube to record the results. So I think it was more than one of those companies. In our case, we decided to focus on Google Plus, which I like a lot, because we saw an opportunity for something which had more privacy controls than Facebook does. And Google benefits by having social information about you and your friends. Again, this is all opt-in. So if, for example, you have a Google Plus profile, which I encourage you all to do, and you sort of structure your circles in a way, we can, with your permission, use that information to, for example, do better selection of YouTube videos for you. So the social signal, the information of sort of who you hang with, is actually useful for us as a ranking signal, along with the other ranking signals we do. So it's not just a question of competing with Facebook, it's really that information allows Google to be better, and that's indeed our objective. Last week we announced a whole bunch of changes in YouTube, which make it much more integrated with this sort of thing. I think Hugo did a very good job of showing you the integration on the Android phone, and that's our path.
But you're trying to beat Facebook.
Well, first place, Facebook has done very well. I don't know that it's beatable in the way you defined it. If you look at technology, one company comes to define one area, you're usually better off doing something different than them. If you try to compete directly, they have many, many positive effects, and you typically don't win. You're better off trying to find something new, something where you can offer something that's differentiated, and that's what we're trying to do with Google Plus.
I see.
With many more products to come.
And same with Android, like there's a lot of comments, and we discussed this earlier about, the iPhone has taken a lead here.
What kind of lead?
You tell me, which lead do you think?
Well, I actually say that Android is ahead of the iPhone now.
In terms of?
Unit volume, with ICS, features, price is lower, more vendors, lower price points. Do I need to continue the list? It's free.
So Android is not inspired by the iPhone.
Okay, so Android was actually founded before the iPhone was.
Didn't look exactly right.
No. Use your favorite search engine, do the history. I'm sure Bing will tell you this answer.
Competition is great. We'll take one question in a few minutes. That's interesting. Let's talk about TV. You launched Google TV, and where is that?
We had this sort of same question about television, and there's a lot of people who are concerned about the future of television. So we thought, is there an opportunity to sort of integrate the internet and television in a new way? So we took Android, remember that, and Chrome, and oh, by the way, I want to do one ad. If you care about security for yourself, use Chrome. The fact that it's much faster than the other browsers shouldn't matter. But it's much safer. End of commercial. So we took Chrome and Android and combined them and stuck it inside of a television. The televisions have a processor and they have DRAM and so forth. They typically don't have a hard drive. And so we were able to figure out a way to sort of download software into that architecture using essentially the languages that Android and Chrome support. And it looks like it's working. We've just released version 2. And by the summer of 2012, so the product cycles go along, the majority of the televisions that you see in the television source here will have Google TV embedded in it. Again, a similar strategy to what we did with Android. The price is free from Google. You will, of course, be paying for the television.
But you might buy a TV producer, a manufacturer, right? Like you bought Motorola.
Well, first place, Motorola doesn't make televisions.
No, but you could buy another one.
That's, as far as I know, that's not ever even been discussed at Google, but you never know. One day we were talking about getting into the refrigerator business, and then I discovered it was a joke.
Well, Motorola is not a joke, right?
No, certainly not. What we decided to do is we wanted to have, because of this mobile first that I was discussing, we wanted to have a part of the mobile ecosystem, so we made an offer over in roughly August to purchase Motorola, which was accepted. It should close in the early part of 2012. In my opinion, it will close. At the moment, they're not owned by Google. We will run them separately to make sure that the Android ecosystem doesn't get changed. We like the way Android works right now.
So all the apps will work on the TV.
Yeah, everything will work and so forth.
That's going to be awesome. Questions in the room? So what are they? It's the first one I've seen. We have a microphone coming to you. If they can move around.
Yeah.
Just introduce yourself in a few words.
Okay. Chris Tuttle, Research 2.0. First of all, a proposal. If you really don't have a name for the J release, you've got to let the web crowd name it tomorrow with a vote. Give us your short list. Let us vote on it.
Good idea.
Cool. Named it Le Web. Anyway, my question is, Android.
Get your mic closer, please. Closer, yes. Thank you.
Android has certainly caught up in terms of features and units. You guys have done a great job. Yet it still seems like application developers, Flipboard being a great example, still focus on iOS. And developers often say, for all the travails of Apple's, running of it, it's the platform. Do you need to do anything to create either another tier or tools or encouragement or funding or something for the best applications that, whether it's Flipboard or others, to end up on Android? Because there's an increasing dissatisfaction for Android users like myself saying, hey, what about us?
First, it's an excellent question. And I would say that it's taken us a while. Our model, of course, is different. We have different hardware manufacturers. It's taken us a while to get software that really is capable of delivering on the promise that you just articulated. I also would say that Apple has done an excellent job with iOS of delivering functionality that we all know about, and I think it's just a superb piece of work. So with the ICS release, our core objective as a company is to get all of the hardware vendors onto that platform. With that, we've just, and from my perspective, speaking personally, we've got the Android market now, again, took us a while, working well, both in terms of the ability to buy, to charge, carrier billing, all those kinds of things. We recently introduced Google Music with a big launch that we did in LA. Again, it took us a while to get there. So my prediction is that 6 months from now, I think the question is exactly right now, and 6 months from now you'll say the opposite, because ultimately applications vendors are driven by volume, and the volume is favored by the open approach that Google is taking, that there are literally so many manufacturers who are working so hard to distribute Android phones globally that whether you like ICS or not, and again I like it a great deal, you will want to develop for that platform, and perhaps even first. So think of it as a transition over the next 6 months.
Next question here from Robert Scoble.
Eric, this is Robert Scoble from Ranspace, and I'm one of the top Google Plus users in the world. But there's some deep holes that Google Plus has. It does not have noise control. It does not let me choose which items are going to show up on my screen. What is Google's approach going to be toward noise control? Facebook's approach is very algorithmic, it does the noise control and you don't have any control. Is Google going to do something like Gmail has, where you have filters that you can write to do things, to take cat photos out of the feed, for instance, or put them somewhere else? tell me a little bit about what you guys are thinking about noise control.
Again, a very specific, Robert, a good and very specific question about Google+. The team is trying to figure out the best way to do that given the way our ecosystem works. I agree with you that it's a problem. You could do it in the way you described. There's other techniques that are algorithmic, which we could also use, because remember, we're a ranking company. So in many ways, we can just detect these things and demote them in the right way. So from my perspective, the best outcome would be that we did it automatically. The information was always there, but there was always a slight bias in favor of ranking based on your preferences. And then for the average person, it would be seamless, and for someone sophisticated like you could control it if you didn't like the decisions we were making. That's tended to be the philosophy Google follows.
Jeremiah Ouyang, right here. Jeremiah.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for coming. You know, I really enjoyed the conversation about governments that you brought up. Now, when you look at the amount of users Google has, I think you're one of the biggest countries in the world. Can you describe to me what type of country Google is and what type of government system you are?
We're 13 years old, so think of us as a teenager. What I've learned about Google is we are not a country. We do not have our own nuclear weapons. We do not have our own police force. And we are seriously subject to the laws of all of the other countries, which don't necessarily agree with each other. Our values are very, very distinct. So if you look at our behavior with respect to China, we were willing to stand up to China and say, we don't like the policies, the active censorship that you're applying to your citizens. And so we moved to Hong Kong. We moved to the other China of the two Chinas, or two systems, one China. So we're willing to take a position in favor of transparency and free speech and free expression. We also believe very much in the power of individuals in terms of their ability to crowdsource ideas, to sort of run it. So although we're certainly not a country, if we were to take our values to a country, it would be a country that valued personal privacy and personal expression, but encouraged an awful lot of public debate in the public sphere.
Thank you. Anyone? Introduce yourself.
Hello. Hi, my name is Anina. I'm with 360 Fashion. Recently, the Android store blocked in China. There are 20 different stores where I have to upload my app. What's your advice to a developer like me? Do I have to sit there for 2 weeks and upload them to all these fragmented stores? What's your plan there?
We're still developing our plan. As you can imagine, because of the China situation, anything we do with China is more complicated than it would be in any other country because of these issues that I was just referring to. I counted more than 70 stores of one kind or another, and I was just in Beijing. So I agree with you, it's a problem. My advice would be to try to figure out the 3 or 4 largest, in particular the ones that are tied to the large mobile carriers, because they're the ones that are likely to get the biggest government support, and therefore they're the ones that are likely to have the greatest volume. But I agree with you, it's a real problem, and we're working on it.
Sir?
My name is Al Karim from Canada, from a software development company called Notions. Very great talk so far today. A quick question. Over the last 8 months, we've seen a lot of consolidation of Google products. Just want to understand, with the focus on just a few properties, what's caused this consolidation, and is there that sort of innovation roots that Google's known for, and is that still a priority, or is it just these few products that we've been talking about today?
So Larry, of course, replaced me as CEO on April 4th, and when we talked about the transition, he felt, and I completely agree with him, that we should focus the company around 7 major areas, and they are search, ads, commerce, Chrome, Android, a few others. So as part of that, and under his leadership, he organized the company into what are called product areas. Within those product areas, there were a set of products, when we compared them to the others, they were quite interesting, but they weren't growing, or they weren't strategic against this. And from our perspective, given the sort of enormous opportunity that we're discussing here, it's better to have those corporate resources applied into those product areas. So Larry has led a process over the last sort of 4 months to look at products that were interesting experiments, but had small customer bases, or we didn't think would fit into one of those, and we've been carefully sort of doing spring cleaning. But there's no change in our approach to innovation. We still have 20% time. We're still buying companies every day. It's amazing the rate at which we buy small talented groups to add to these initiatives, but they're done under the rubric of commerce, search, ads, enterprise, those sorts of things.
Michael Barek here, and then Ben Parr.
Hi, nice to see you again.
You got a great ad for Chrome. Could you give us an update on Chrome OS as well, especially the post-PC world?
Did I mention that you should use Chrome? Did I talk about security? Another reason to use Chrome is its speed. I forgot to mention that. But if you don't care about security, you should care about speed. Chrome is doing exceptionally well, and the reason is, and what I like about Chrome is it's an example of a product that was not first in the market and has been able, by virtue of all of the hard work of others, including in particular Mozilla, have taken a market which I thought was going to be consolidated into a relatively low innovation model by Microsoft into a really, really competitive model around the web. As part of that, Apple, Google, and a few other companies are driving the adoption of HTML5. So one way to think about it at an application level is that the web is moving to HTML5 as an applications programming model, and all of the companies have now agreed to that. Chromebooks are the instantiation of Chrome HTML5 in a browser. There's a video of the setup of a Chromebook, and the setup of a Chromebook is you open it and you log in. And what it does is, because it has no local state, it takes your server state and downloads it. So if you lose your Chromebook, you just get another one. We use them a lot internally in the company, and people talk about it. The thing that's missing with Chromebooks is there's a set of apps which are today not yet available on HTML5. So that's the thing that's holding it back. The price points are better than PCs, so that's good, but we still need the other apps, and they're coming.
Ben Parr?
Yeah, oh, there we go. Thank you. Ben Parr, previously to Mashable, now working on something new. So one of my favorite things I've read in the last couple of weeks is Google X and the entire futuristic lab where all the crazy things are being built. I'm not going to ask you what's being built, though feel free to share the entire list of that. I'm more curious how—
Someone already did. They leaked it.
The entire list?
Yes, yes. That was what the subject of the article was.
I'm curious how you choose these projects, though. How are these more advanced projects, these very futuristic focused ones, is there a theme to them, or is it just throwing darts at a dartboard?
Well, what's interesting about computer science is that if you get enough computer scientists in a room, you'll get the list of stuff we're working on. Because at any point in time, the top researchers in computer science are looking for applications of computing in new problems. So whether it's in communication or computer-associated vision or new forms of knowledge reasoning, taxonomies, the ability to do language understanding, applications of big data in new ways. So I think a simple way to understand what Google X is doing is simply wander through a computer science program in one of the top universities and then imagine those things as products. And that's roughly how we do it. So in our case, it's driven by a researcher who wants to productize their idea quickly. The typical cycle is Larry or Sergey, who are better at this stuff than I am, will go find such a faculty member and bring them into the company, literally personally, right? Talk to them, recruit them, and then get them the resources. And obviously we have enough resources to fund this. And from the researcher's perspective, it's an opportunity to see their life stream really have scale if it works. The best example of this is the driverless cars. When Larry first showed me this, I said, Larry, you must be kidding. It's a typical Larry conversation. And it turns out he was completely right, it turns out as usual, that in our lifetimes, it's a fair statement to say that a majority of cars will probably be driverless or driverless assisted. And the reason is that it's at some basic level, it's safer to have the car be driven by the car, given the laser interferometry and so forth. Their reaction time is faster than yours as a human. This will take a long time to work out, but it's an example where an idea in the lab, in this case Stanford, in 2005 with the driverless challenge, translated into what is undoubtedly a significant product set of products for companies other than Google, but funded through Google.
This is going to be very frustrating because I see 100 hands, and we'll take the last one because Eric has to go somewhere else.
Thank you very much, Eric and Loic. Really, I'm very thankful with this debate and keynote. It's one of the best I've had for many years.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much. My question is very simple, actually. I would like to know why Google